Spain winning is obviously, it's a big deal. Their first Women's World Cup. And but the issue, the cloud over this team is their federation and their coach. And we've spoken about this a little bit throughout the tournament, but we haven't mentioned there is a thread that was written by Michael Emilio, who is a photographer. And I guess I don't know where he works in particular, but the thread went viral.
Okay.
And these are just the bullet points. These are kind of the specifics about why the Spanish players kind of protested, and a lot of them didn't even play in this World Cup. A lot of the names that we're kind of familiar with. But here's just a quick rundown. So here are some of the complaints. Lack of privacy. And it says in the tweet, Jorge Vilda infamously prohibited players to lock their hotel room doors while on national team duty with Spain. I've mentioned that before because that's one of the things I heard. The other mention is lack of rest, that there was a lack of kind of rotating players, a lack of medical assistance. It says the Spanish Federation would not invest properly into the Spanish women's national team, causing injuries to be commonplace, lack of nutritionists, lack of match analysis and tactical understanding, low quality training sessions. And it continues, says, as players reported to have been in a worse physical shape when returning to their respective clubs after having been on national team duty. So if you were watching the celebrations with the trophy, or just being excited about winning World Cup, you saw all the players completely ignore their coach. They don't give him pretty much any credit. Even when players get subbed off and the coach is shakes hands,
usually high five, hip bump,
none of that. So clearly the players are doing this in spite of their coach and the federation, and the players have been very upfront in saying they don't want him as their coach. The federation said, nope, we're keeping him. And there's also more details of and this is all sort of conspiracies and stuff like that. But Vilda is I don't know if it's not related or something, but he was like a voter for something, and people think that he got the job out of a favor.
They're tying it through.
Yeah,
so
and they're like, no, we're not going
to.
Yeah, we're not going to get rid of him because or whatever.
I think that some of those details are less important than the road that kind of paved the way for these women to actually win this final.
Yeah.
I think it was in the management of these demands. I think the initial reaction is very telling in that the FA really decided to go with the news cycle at its next possible convenience.
Yeah.
To sort of create this narrative of these players are betrayers of Spain, and it's a you problem, not an us problem, which is just more than unreasonable. It's very understated that I say that.
Yeah, and I just want to add the actual word that they used, that the players were labeled as blackmailers by certain fans and media, and that's And this is so the intention was for the players to bring this up privately, and the federation made it public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So there were the captains who were tasked with delivering this letter, whether or not they were signatories on it. They were in support of it, delivered it to hear their fellow players out. And instead of it being a meeting even to rehash what the issues are, which these are all very reasonable asks, whether you're in playing a football game or life in a business, especially as women, right? And this kind of feeds back into sort of Infantino's quote more recently, which I'm sure we'll get to. But the fact that there wasn't even an understanding that maybe we should collaborate on making this better, and the instant knee-jerk reaction was, you're all wrong. And as an aside, because there's been a lot of what about or actuallys today, even directed my way online, is even if these were hypothetical situations, if you have 15 of your players come to you with a request, demand, and they're willing to work with it, which that was how it was framed initially, is we're willing to work with you. We want to see our needs met.
Yeah.
Even if it's not significant, substantial, or super duper explosive, oh my God, gas, which we've seen unfortunately a lot in WOSO.
Yeah.
You still hear them out.
Yeah, at the very least, this doesn't. The way the Spanish Federation kind of responded feels a little bit like y'all are being like a dismissive. Y'all are being emotional kind of a
Right.
thing. But then you look at the requests, and it's just like workplace
Yeah.
condition
Yes.
things
Yes.
that you would think. There doesn't seem that to be as much emotion in it as there is like principle. Right. So when you hear some of the players that didn't want to come back, they were just like, no, I'm standing by, my
Right.
principles, and this is what I believe, and that is why I'm not playing.
And on the other side of that coin is no player looks at a World Cup as not the greatest crowning achievement of your career. Even if you don't win, you've now played in a World Cup.
Yeah.
You're not going to turn that down.
Yeah,
okay?
it has to be very
Right,
serious for you to turn
and
down.
that's just the serious, right. There's a certain amount of weight carried there that
Yeah.
for sure should have been taken far more seriously than it had been. That's
Yeah.
just incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, so it does seem like an institutional issue.
I'd say institutional failure across the board, but also women have been asked, especially in this particular sport, I can't speak to many of the others because I'm just not in the weeds there, to achieve and succeed and win in every single facet without having a modicum of support in the right direction under the worst conditions in less than what the men would be expected to perform under, which is just not reasonable. We're
Right,
playing
right.
the same game.
Exactly. Yeah, it's look, it's unfair is like the easy way to kind of describe it, and but even the requests or just or the complaints themselves seem incredibly reasonable. None of them are like the coach was mean to me. Nobody's like
But also
saying
it
that.
wasn't like, P.S. I would like a pony, XO, caldente. Like you're asking for things that are
Yeah.
reasonable within your scope of work.
I
Yeah.
think one of the interesting thing is too, it's like a lot of these players, since they all play for the same club team at Barca, like one of the
Yeah,
best
largely
clubs in the world. They're
Barca,
like, you see what they're like, what are we
Real.
doing? Like we have everything we could ever want at our disposal for our clubs. And then you go to like the national team and like, for what it's worth, also not a small national team, like a massive national team, and their resources are just bad. It's crazy.
I mean, it's also a wonder how the actual club teams hadn't gotten more involved, because even if you want to look at it as these players are commodities in which we are invested and expect a yield,
For sure.
you can't keep receiving your players back.
Yeah, the club
in
should
a
be
diminished state.
even
Yeah.
more. I mean,
You know, like, and I'm saying that as like, if you want to oversimplify it and don't make it a human issue, and you just want it as like they're our commodity as a business,
Yeah.
you're still not in the greatest shape as a club to be receiving your players
right,
back
and
way.
and which is why FIFA pays the clubs for releasing their players. That is a part of the bonus of like because they know that the clubs themselves are the ones who have made the investment in not only paying the players but in their training, in their health. So it only benefits.
So it's almost like it's complicit.